to talk about Microsoft Cowork. And it is, in my opinion, it's really what Copilot should have been when it was originally released. But I understand speed to market and getting things out there as fast as you can as a product owner. But Cowork really expands on a ton of different capabilities and really makes it kind of a seamless transition to do things of value. And the reason I say of value is if anybody's used Copilot with PowerPoint, you may notice that it doesn't really do a good job, right? It kind of does some things, but it doesn't really hit the mark, right? And this really expands on that. And I'll show this first example just as a teaser. Let's see, where can I?
Can you talk just a moment about, because they may notice Copilot or Cowork, but then it says Frontier. Can you spend a moment and just talk about that program?
Yeah, absolutely. So Frontier is essentially Microsoft's latest and greatest. It's when they put things out into preview, right? So this isn't general availability, but it's in a preview status, still enabling users to get access to it, to utilize it, but you have to have your tenant set up to allow preview capabilities. Essentially what preview indicates is things could change at any time for the better or for the worse, but I haven't experienced for the worse with Cowork. I am using it in another organization as well, actually, my day job. And I'm using that in a testing scenario as well. And it just continues to get better. But the biggest thing is you have to have Frontier items enabled in your environment. And when you enable Frontier, you get a number of other things too. For instance, anything labeled with Frontier and Parend, you get as well. So app builder, it's on the screen, so I'm going to say it, planner, and we know why I'm reluctant to say that. There's Mel smiling. She loves her planner.
I love it.
Workflows. But essentially, this is the evolution of everything for the agents that have existed. So for people thinking of the PowerPoint functionality, there is the PowerPoint agent that's becoming available that is general availability, but it's still not as good as what's available in Cowork. And Tony and I were having a little experiment earlier, and we were having Cowork respond to messages that were in a group chat that we're part of. And the interesting thing was Cowork and Copilot were not really aware of each other. Cowork was more aware of Copilot than Copilot was aware of Cowork. It sounds really funny because they're both Microsoft products, but there is a silo between the two products. So as time goes on, I would expect that to become more narrow and not be as, I guess, I'll share that chat. I guess it would be probably a good area to talk about. I don't think we have too much in here. So if we scroll here, what Tony says, what's interesting is Copilot chat seems to be unaware of Copilot Cowork. This is the answer that Copilot said about Cowork. Short answer is you don't have access to Copilot Cowork directly because it's not a standalone Microsoft product. It's an agent, right? It's an agent in the ecosystem. It's not a separate product. It's just an agent. It's agent on steroids, if I may say that. But if we come down here, I prompted Cowork to go ahead and respond, right, to that. And it came up with, in my defense, that was the other Copilot guessing. Let me set the record straight. So there's a little bit of infighting between the two products or the two agents. But as time goes on, I expect Copilot to be more aware of Cowork. But I know that was a long answer to what Frontier program is. But as I digress.
I love how it like italicized the other Copilot, like it's talking about its wayward stepbrother.
Yeah.
Well, if
it's
we
like
go
the
here,
evil twin.
So it was, yes, this is really proof. I'm Copilot Cowork, set up to monitor this chat, what I can do, and it talks about it. And then that's when we got into the prompt that Tony submitted to Copilot. So it's just interesting. And that's kind of across the board. And you'll notice sometimes too, if you, in Copilot, if you just reference other agents, if you don't reference it in a very specific way, it acts like it's unaware or it can't connect to it, even though it can connect if you go through a very specific way of doing it. So it's interesting how efficient and effective Copilot can be as well as a little bit disjointed as time as it continues to mature and evolve. All right, I'm going to go back to Cowork.
And so you find Cowork, Gene, is it under agents or where?
Yep, I'm just going to
where do you
go
find
into
it?
that. So if I'm in either Teams or the M365 app, I'm in the M365 app here. But if I was in Teams, where most people use, why it's doing that. But it does pop up under your agents section. If it doesn't pop up there, you can do all agents, and you can do a search for Cowork right here, and it'll show up. Again, you have to have the capability enabled for your tenant, but once that is enabled, you'll get the Cowork agent as well as many other agents. Same locations, the same view in here. It's just a little bit different way of getting to it. Is there anything else, Mel? Or
No,
Tony?
that's it.
Okay. So the segue that we can talk about first is Tony was talking about scheduled prompts. Why would I want to use Cowork instead of just scheduling a prompt? Well, there's one reason. There's the scheduling mechanism allows you to have a little bit more flexibility in how you schedule things. So if I go to this scheduled prompt and I can edit schedule, I have a few more options in the schedule. I've got every hour. So every 60 minutes, it can run this prompt, something that's not available on the scheduled prompt. I can do every weekday, I can do weekly, and I can do monthly. So I can do a number of different scheduled types there. Additionally, it's going to run into a bit of perpetuity. There's no end schedule or anything like that in here. There's no date range. Whether that is intended or they'll adjust that is to be seen. But right now, there's no date schedule to say do it for the next 5 days, do it for the next so many days. You can, though, put that in the prompt itself and say only do this for the next 5 days, and it's intelligent enough to do that. But there's no configurable date as of right now.
The
This
run mode
also
gives you an option, which is nice.
Yep. This is also kind of touching on when Tony was like, where does this prompt produce the result for the scheduled prompt? It produces it at the end of that existing prompt. You have the ability to do it in the same session, which is what Tony was experiencing, or I can do a new session, which is a new clean window of a prompt so you wouldn't have to scroll down to the bottom, things like that. You can also see the history of how often it is run and also the status of it. Anytime you make a change to a scheduled prompt, it will disable it or pause it, and then you have to re-enable it. This specific prompt is a daily morning briefing. So very similar to what Mel and Tony were talking about. But one of the key differences here is kind of delivery of that information. So with scheduled prompts, you can have it delivered in email. Can you have it? I can't recall completely. Can you have that delivered in a Teams message too? Or is it just email when you
I don't
schedule
see it in a
prompt?
Teams message.
Okay. So
It shows up. It just shows up in, in your conversation history of Copilot it's bold with the green check.
Gotcha. So there is a couple different ways here. One, you can certainly do an email. Two, you can have it send you a Teams message, right? It can ping you directly. So it's essentially having a conversation with yourself. I don't have any in here right now, but if I went to the chats and went to myself, it would be a message from me in here, right? It would say it was delivered by Cowork, but it would be a message to myself. And I'll talk a little bit about why you would want to do that here in just a moment. But going back here, there's a pretty nifty little feature. You can say, hey, draft this into an HTML report. So now I can have an HTML report of my information, nicely formatted, clean, a little bit easier to look at. Just gives you the ability to flag things or make it more interpreted the way you want to see things. I did a very plain Jane simplistic item here, but you can have this formatted any which way you want. It's pretty, anything that you can do with HTML, JavaScript, JSON, you can do all of that in here. You can just ask Cowork to create it in a certain way, and it's going to do that for you. And I'll show you another example of a dashboard here in a moment. It's quite a bit more robust. But this is just an HTML file. You can share it with people. You can come back to it all you want. You can have Cowork continually update the same HTML file, so it's not creating a new one each time. So you can continually go back to that same file and not have to worry about it. So it's very handy. But the prompt itself was very simplistic. This is the prompt. I generate a polished professional HTML daily briefing report for myself and save it as a downloadable file. Pull together everything relevant to the day shared. Now, I didn't write that. This is what I wrote. I want to read all my chats, messages, emails, and anything that I have worked on and provide a detailed and polished HTML report on a daily basis. It then breaks it out into this much more robust prompt for itself to execute on a daily basis. So much like Copilot in general can reason through things very well, you may have a bit of an elongated conversation back and forth. Maybe at the end of that conversation, you would say, how do I frame this prompt in a better way so the next time I ask this, I only have to ask it one time and not have to go back and forth with the dialogue? Well, it kind of takes out that step right there for you. It says, okay, I get what you're saying, but that's not the best way for me to digest and interpret it. So it goes ahead and creates this on your behalf for you. And it continues to break it down. And before it publishes it and enables it for you, it asks you, hey, does this look right to you? So it's not just doing something and then you're like, oh, wait, I didn't mean for it to actually do that. It actually has you review and verify, and then you can enable it and it'll start executing on your behalf on the schedule that you've created. I don't have to go anyplace differently to schedule something. All I have to do is indicate some sort of schedule that I want. And then it understands to infer from that and create that schedule for you on your behalf. So it's pretty fascinating how it does it. And throughout the entire process, and Copilot has these features too, you can go ahead and click through to see what it's doing during those particular events. It'll find things that it wants to ruminate on a little bit, right? And reason over to make sure that it's reviewing things appropriately, finding things that, like this one, notice something that I was double booked on. There's essentially the same event, this event, and then a placeholder for it. And it noticed that. So I like to go through, and when I'm running a prompt in real time, I like to kind of follow through to see what it's doing. I always enjoy that because it gives me a little bit of insight, maybe how to frame things up better the next time I request something from Copilot or Cowork. So I do encourage people to look at these things when they offer the ability to click the drop downs and things like that. I'll pause there for a sec. Don't email anybody else. Have any thoughts, questions?
And you were sort of, I feel like comparing, contrasting the scheduled prompt versus like being able to do a similar function via Cowork. Wouldn't you also say that there are some significant differences in capability of what Cowork can accomplish versus what you can get done within Copilot Chat?
Absolutely. So one of the things that Cowork is designed to do is it's designed to be an entry point for the entire supporting ecosystem for basically Office 365. So in Office 365, you have workflow capabilities via Power Automate. You can start executing those workflows via Cowork. What I do like about it is it's really eliminating the need to actually use some of these things. So if we go back to the concept of monitoring a chat or monitoring a Teams channel or a group chat, in the past, you'd have to have some sort of automation set up for that. You'd have to set up maybe a Power Automate workflow that looks for keywords and things like that. This allows for not having to do that. You don't have to create a workflow for that. But as time goes on, maybe you have a more robust workflow that does different things. Maybe it connects to a SQL server, maybe updates different data sets and Dataverse, something to that effect. You could have Cowork execute that on your behalf. So it can actually call workflows. It can also read SharePoint lists. They're in the process of enabling it to update those SharePoint lists. So you can have a dialogue about a SharePoint list, the information in the list, and then have it make updates based on that. So think of a world where you have a SharePoint list, maybe a project tracking list, and Mel has assigned you all the work in the world. and you just want to go through and you want to complete all that work without any resolution. So she is very angry. So you can actually go through there and say, hey, complete all of these, close all of these down. And it's going to go through and it's going to update all those fields. So behind the scenes, it's making graph API calls, it's doing things like that. But from your standpoint, you can just say, do this, and it's going to start doing that. And what I'm really excited about is the fact that as time goes on, it's going to incorporate and combine all the functionality that exists out there that we currently utilize. So think of going to SharePoint, think of going to Planner, think of it already has full integration with Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You can create dashboards with Excel very quickly, very easily. You can submit recurring workflows for updating that Excel. But as time goes on, it's going to have hooks into everything that's available. So Cowork, in my eyes, is going to be probably a one-stop shop for anything that you want to action on within the Copilot Cowork environment. And I would probably see, as time goes on, Copilot Cowork becoming the same orchestration mechanism. Maybe Copilot, kind of the name moniker Copilot going away, and Cowork maybe becoming the standard. I definitely see that happening.
So as the same with Copilot Chat, I think it's important to call out that it will be able to do anything that the apps already can do, right? So if you can build a dashboard in Excel, you can automate it using Cowork, for example, but you're not going to be able to ask it to do something that the application is not capable of without using Cowork, right?
Yep, absolutely. And also, it's security trimmed, same as Copilot. It can't do things that you don't have access to, meaning read a file, update a file you don't have access to, and things like that. So it follows all the same principles and policies. It's just a little bit different. I would say it's probably the action mechanism compared to Copilot's just the surfacing of information for the most part.
One question that I've been seeing online a lot, people are asking a lot about, like, so is Cowork just the new evolution of Copilot? Is it the new version, like the V2 of it? Would you describe it that way, Gene, or do you think that there's a stark enough difference that you wouldn't say that?
Everybody that I've talked to has made the same kind of key statement, which is where I got it, is Cowork is what Copilot should have been when it was originally released. So I do believe Cowork is the evolution of Copilot, but granted, as a big corporation as Microsoft, you can't really come out and say that to get egg on your face. That's my opinion, obviously, but and I've talked to a number of different people about this, and it's the same thing they all say verbatim. It's what Copilot should have been.
Well, right.
All
From the beginning, the capability that so many people we've talked to in the past have shown frustration with, which is, assuming that with Copilot currently, that the current implementation being embedded in applications, saying Copilot, go format this table in this way in Excel, and then it's like, instead of actually doing it, it just says, oh, here's how you do that. Like, well, I know how to do that. I just want you to actually do it because it'd be much faster, right? I think that's a key element. And not just that, I think the other thing you pointed at is, and I'm probably kind of showing my age here, but with the proliferation of additional applications, like spending a moment to remember where I need to go to update this particular thing means, okay, I got to dig through. Is that in a website? No, it's a Teams app. Okay, where is it in my list? Instead, I could just keep a running conversation and say, yeah, I got that accomplished. Go ahead and head out to Planner, close out that task for me.
Absolutely. And just like Copilot, as time goes on too, it's going to learn these behaviors. And once you give it permission to do something, so for instance, post a message to Teams on your behalf. Once you say, yeah, go ahead and do that, it's going to then be able to go ahead and do that without getting your validation the next time for that particular activity, right? So the reason I wanted to say that is, so say you have something that it knows that there's tons of planner tasks, right? And it knows that you work off your projects on that, and you ask, hey, what are my planner tasks for today, or what's due today? And it brings those up. and you're working through those things and it notices that you've come to a resolution point or you've completed that task, it could very easily go do that for you without you asking it to do that, right? So that's really, we come to the next evolution of kind of AI is things reasoning on your behalf after you've given them the guardrails to operate within. So we're really close to getting there, but again, I still don't like things to do things without me allowing it to do it. So giving it the ability to not ask me to do this the next time, I haven't allowed that yet. I don't know. I'm showing my age there too, Tony.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm in the same place. Like I fire off a message in Teams or Outlook or whatever, and we all have the same capability. And then I walk away and none of us are paying attention to it. And then like agents associated with all three of us have had a conversation and come to a decision and then like maybe message somebody. I'm like, that makes me a bit nervous. So, not so nervous that I wouldn't want to try it out, of course, but maybe like in a safe, contained like demo space, of course.
So as we're talking about this is, with Copilot chat, I can go into settings, personalization. I can kind of modify that on the fly. Is there a different place for Cowork to kind of modify those settings, or do you modify that through the chat with Cowork?
So there is not a different place to do that within settings. I can tell you what I've noticed, because I've noticed that I can put in personalization into Copilot and it doesn't seem to carry over to Cowork. But the reason, how I tested that, I was very specific because I wanted to see what it was going to do. What I can tell you is it reasons over your information in such detail. It already interprets your own persona and how you respond to things, how you talk, your mannerisms, and things like that without having to put those personalizations in there, which I do like. I don't like the fact that there's no place to automatically get to it right now, to maybe put in some hard rules for specific things if working with this level of person or this specific person do XYZ. But you could certainly do that through the conversational prompt itself. But it would be nice to have that same place to go into settings and change the personalization.
Probably a good time to just point out once again that this is still in preview. So perhaps that's something that we'll see as a feature over time.
One thing that's interesting that I think is worth noting too is that we have access to Frontier in this tenant, and I think it may be useful to people who drop in here, of course, that don't have access to it, so they have an idea at least of what's capable, what's coming. We're not under NDA with this. Like Mel and I have gone to workshops. We've had to sign NDAs for like very early access information. But Frontier is a program that I want to say, I don't know, Gene, tell me if I'm wrong. I think most, if not all tenants can opt into. There may be some exceptions, but and then they just get access to it before the general audience of tenants does so.
Correct. It's for anybody that's likes to dabble on the technical side of things. Say with a Windows operating system, you can opt in to get a preview version of those Windows operating systems. You don't have to be anybody special to do that. Same scenario for this. There's no requirements to say you have to fit these parameters in order to be enabled. All right, I know we only have a little bit of time left. I do want to show something that's a little bit more robust here. So I wanted to create a test data set. Now Copilot can do this. It can create you a test data set. But I wanted to just create a quick test data set of Copilot, fictional Copilot usage data. And I wanted to go ahead and put it into a report dashboard to show as an example of what that can look like. So if I go ahead and open this, I'm going to open it in OneDrive to get a better experience, full-fledged experience here. I'll change this theme to light. So this is through prompting with Cowork to create an HTML report. So visually it looks great. I can export all this information to JSON, CSV, can add a record. I can enable editing to edit the data down here in this table. I can also go down here. I've got filters for various things, right? So it's my own personal, fully interactive application that I created. just based off a few prompts. So if you think on this just on personal work level, how many things that you do on a daily basis that could benefit from something like this? So you could just go through and knock off a bunch of things. And you could absolutely have this integrated with something else too. Like when I change this value in something, maybe it's surfacing information from a SharePoint list, right? And as soon as I change that value to another status, it's executing a workflow, right? Because it's tied, the workflow is tied to the list. Or you could have Copilot do that work, Cowork do that work for you too, saying when I change this value, go ahead and update this, send an email, do whatever, and not have to have a workflow tied to that SharePoint list. So this becomes extremely robust very quickly. And again, this wasn't done by me coming up with something very intricate, right? I just said I need a test data set enough for a proper demo of what Cowork can accomplish. I did have a couple back and forths with it. It created the initial Excel spreadsheet, which in itself was a good output, right? It had the README file, has the usage detail, right? It has the users, has the monthly summary. So it has the raw data to what I want. This is an
Way
old
better
version,
than
so
what
it's got
chat
cache.
would have produced.
Exactly. And I'm actually
Yeah.
utilizing this functionality for something existing for my day job that refreshes a data set 3 times a day, produces an Excel dashboard, and we ultimately built a Power BI dashboard off of the Excel file. And oddly enough, the Excel file still gets used more than the Power BI dashboard, just because the dashboard in Excel was not more intuitive, but people have an affinity to Excel because they're so familiar with it. They can interact with it so much more quickly. So I was really impressed. And you can continue to refine this and take it to whatever degree you want to go to. In fact, I've used the language of, create me something that really wows me in terms of presentation. Just left it with that prompt. And what it comes back with, it does wow me. I'm just like, holy cow, I can't believe I just asked that simple question and it did all the work behind the scenes to produce the result that it did. So it was pretty fantastic.
And Gene,
Lastly,
this is taking like minutes to create, right?
Yes.
Not like hours.
Yes.
It just
Now it does take a little bit longer, like a few minutes, right? We're used to Copilot asking a question, response, taking seconds, right? This is a good time to point out, Cowork does use Claude models, right? It doesn't use GPT models. So it uses Claude. That's a big thing, just because in my experience, Claude actually does a better job with the heavy lifting tasks. So for instance, if I'm doing any development work at home, I'm using Claude Code because it does such a better job than GPT. So I can see why they're leveraging Claude models for use within Cowork. But yes, it takes, a few minutes to create some of these really robust things. And for the simple things, I can say tomorrow. So think of those days of sticky note on your keyboard, right? When you leave for the day. So now I just did this. And so tomorrow it's going to send me a Teams message to myself saying, don't forget to do this, right? So just the simplest things that this can do. I'll set up a one-time reminder for tomorrow morning. This is where it says, okay, remind me with this message, do not finish any work for her. Activate and run, right? So now it's activated. It shows me over here that it's active. I can run it right now if I want to. I can also edit if I want to. More complex than the options below. Now I haven't seen that before because I haven't gone into one of these. So that's interesting because since it's one occurrence, I would suspect that's why it's saying it's more complex. But I'm really excited for Cowork and to see what the evolution of it is.
Yeah.
with the different LLM behind it, is there benefit in, depending on what you're doing in Cowork, maybe chatting with Copilot chat? I mean, we saw earlier that there are different responses because they're not, they don't have awareness of each other, or chat doesn't have awareness of Cowork, but because it's a different LLM, you could get different results, right?
Yes, I would say the biggest difference that I've noticed with the Claude models in general is GPT models work great. I don't have any issues with GPT models, but I notice sometimes I have to have more dialogue back and forth with them. you have to fill in the gaps, right? The Claude models seem to fill in the gaps for you. It's better at understanding even the context you're not aware of, right? Adding in, well, they asked this, so they probably need to add this, this, and this in there too. And it'll go ahead and do that, and then ask you to verify that, right? So it gets you to the end goal a little bit quicker, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've run into that too. I feel like, granted, I haven't really focused so much in Claude Opus in Copilot, but like using Claude directly, it actually seems to anticipate. Like I was having an active conversation and I referenced something, and then I made a mistaken reference to one thing when I really meant another, and it picked up on that and was like, I think you meant this, and so I'm going to give you a result based on that. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. I just made a mistake when I was prompting. So I mean,
absolutely. It kind of reminds me of like when you go to Google something and you mistype it, or you kind of make some,
did you mean
realize
blah,
you
blah,
typed
blah,
in nonsense. It says, searching for this, it corrects what you're trying to search for, right?
Yeah.
And then and gives you the option to revert back if necessary. But